I can't believe it's taken me so long to get to this one, 1986's Labyrinth. I absolutely loved this movie as a kid. I hadn't revisited it in well over 2 decades, so let's see if it holds up. We open on the incredibly talented Jennifer Connelly playing Sarah Williams. Sarah's reciting lines from a fantasy book she loves. The book is, of course, called The Labyrinth. She's late getting home, but her parents are more concerned with their own lives and expensive things than where their underage daughter has been. Their major concern in regards to Sarah is that she has to be there to watch her half-brother Toby, an infant. Toby does nothing but annoy Sarah. She pulls from the fantasy book she clearly loves and says the exact right words to summon the Goblin King to come and take Toby away. When she does this, she has no indication that the book is actually real. There's no explanation as to how this fantasy novel is actually impacting her real world, or where she obtained this magical book, but we're just going to push past that. What's important is that the Goblin King, Jareth, played strangely but wonderfully by David Bowie, takes Toby to his castle, at the center of a large labyrinth populated with a whole fantastical civilization. Jareth gives Sarah 13 hours to rescue Toby before the baby will irreversibly be turned into a goblin. Through Sarah's journey, she encounters a number of fantasy creatures. Not all of them are against her. There's a whole world that lives inside these labyrinth walls, and the individuals that make up that world also make up their own minds about how the Goblin King affects their lives. Sarah faces many foes, perils, puzzles, and traps. She also makes friends and meets allies in the labyrinth. Ludo, a large gentle beast who can summon rocks. Sarah ends up saving this gentle giant from goblins, which makes him loyal to her for the remainder of her journey. Ludo's the most memorable, but even before him, Sarah meets Hoggle. Hoggle was once loyal to Jareth, but through the journey he has with Sarah and the circumstances, the two of them begin to bond. Initially, Hoggle only helps her for his own self-interest, but eventually the two do form a very real friendship. Sir Didymus and Ambrosius come as a pair. Didymus is essentially Don Quixote. He's a fox-like creature that rides Ambrosius, a sheepdog. Didymus is overconfident and often gets in over his head, where his mount is far more timid in these situations. Ambrosius ends up being crucial in helping the group navigate the maze. One of the first puzzles that Sarah needs to solve is the infamous door knocker scene. There's 2 doors that block her path, each with a talking knocker on the front. Through some funny banter, Sarah finally gets the riddle. One door leads to the castle, the other door leads to death. Sarah's allowed to ask only one question to figure out which door is which. The catch here is that one will always lie and the other one will always tell the truth, but she doesn't know which is which. As a kid, I could never quite figure out this puzzle. I thought it was something of a paradox where there actually is no right answer and that both doors would lead to death. That I was clearly wrong on. To solve this puzzle, what Sarah has to do is ask either guard, and it doesn't matter which door would the other guard say leads to the castle. That way, either guard, the liar or the honest one, would indicate the same door. The door that either one of them would indicate would actually be the door of death. More childhood misunderstandings. I always thought she got it wrong, because as she steps through the door, she falls into a pit. But there's this small detail that I missed. The labyrinth punishes arrogance or cockiness. Sarah actually does pick the correct door, but says it's a piece of cake. I found an article online targeting this phrase specifically, and every one of the 3 times it's used in the movie. There are a ton more examples in the novel. Every time Sarah says, it's a piece of cake, things take a horrible turn for the worse. She falls in this pit, and later on when she's talking to Jareth about the maze, she says once again it's a piece of cake, and he speeds up time, cutting her 13 hours down drastically. The next big iconic set piece is the Bog of Eternal Stench. Basically, the fart swamp. Farts are funny for kids. The scene was a bit silly as an adult, introducing it to another adult who has no childhood connection to this movie. But the character moments that lead to it are pretty real. Jareth offers to grant Sarah all of her dreams and desires if she would just give up on the baby. Jareth has her drugged, and there's some bizarre sequences following with her ending up at a masquerade with Jareth dancing, and then she wakes up in this bog. It's only due to Ludo's loyalty that this isn't the end of Sarah's journey. Sarah eventually makes it to Jareth and ends up in an MC Escher room, a room of nonsensical staircases that all defy gravity. She's chasing Toby through the confusing room, playing by this fantasy world's rules. Then she realizes that the solution to this entire thing is in her own willpower. The whole journey has been about her self-discovery. The journey started with lines from the book, and she ends it with more lines from the same book. She utters, "You have no power over me," and the nightmare is over. The soft delivery of the line, instead of her shouting at him, makes it even more powerful. Back in her own world, all the magic and bizarre creatures are gone. It looks like the whole thing may have even been some insanely vivid dream. The lessons she learned along the way stick, and Sarah has more appreciation for her family and her own capabilities. Her friends from the Labyrinth appear to her in the mirror and let her know they'll always be there when she needs them. Sarah may have grown up, but she doesn't have to leave her sense of wonder and adventure behind. This movie actually holds up pretty well as an adult. It may be because I have a history with it, but it's a solid story without too many gaps that you have to mentally bridge. Seeing more of how Sarah was before the adventure kicks off could have made the changes she goes through that much more impactful, but I feel like the 9-year-old me that first discovered this movie wouldn't have grasped all the concepts so well. The effects aren't seamless by today's standards, but because it was 80s movie magic with practical effects, full sets, gorgeous costumes, and intricate puppets done by the legendary Jim Henson, everything has aged very well. Critics and audiences alike, even today, love the innovation seen on the screen and the impressive scale of it all. The character design makes a wonderful fantasy world that has a very real and tangible feel to it. Everything created in the fantasy world interacts so well with the live-action actors. Bowie and a young Jennifer Connelly give strong performances that never have any walls thrown up between themselves and the costumes or puppets that they're constantly interacting with. As with many of these retrospective or cult classic lookbacks that we've been doing, Labyrinth was a commercial failure. I was actually shocked to learn that. I thought the names Jim Henson and David Bowie, weird they even go together, alone would bring in audiences. With an estimated budget of around $25 million, which was a big gamble for a fantasy movie in the mid-1980s, the movie earned just under $13 million on initial release. When you factor in marketing and distribution, it makes that loss an even bigger hit. Labyrinth would eventually find its audience on home video releases, merchandise, and further re-releases as the technology continued to grow for home video, and eventually the movie became profitable in time as well as beloved. Check out this video next for more retrospective lookbacks.